Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today, we're taking pictures of our pets. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Oh, welcome back to this episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. As always, I am your host, Raymond Hatfield, and I'm really excited to be here because today I interview pet photographer Nicole Begley. Now, she has had a real interesting start in photography that I know is going to give you just some great tips if you are looking to photograph your pets or other animals. So you can tell that Nicole just really loves what it is that she does, and it shines through in the way that she talks about her work. And in this interview, I'm just really excited to get into it. But first, I wanted to remind you that if you've been on the fence about joining the premium membership, now may be the right time for you. Each week, I interview some of the world's top photographers in their field, like Nicole today, to learn just how they see and capture the world. But for those of you listening who want to start making money with your camera, the premium membership is just for you. Each week, I also ask guests about the best ways that they use their cameras to earn money, and save that just for premium members. So this week, premium members will learn why Nicole went into the unproven business of pet photography with confidence, the best form of marketing Nicole has found to book her consistent clients, just what pet owners are buying from their sessions so you know exactly what to offer and what not to offer, and what Nicole did after moving to a brand new state to fill her calendar with bookings. As a premium member, you get the information just like this delivered to you each and every week. And starting next week, September 1st, the price to join the premium membership is actually going up. But if you become a premium member today, before September 1st, you will be locked in at the current price of just $10 a month. You will also get full monthly business training workshops, which are easily a $50 value, and access to the premium members only Facebook group with other members that are just happy to help and support you on your journey. All of this, again, just $10 a month. So sign up before September 1st to lock in your price for the life of your membership. You can become a premium member now by clicking the link in the show notes or by clicking the premium membership tab at the top of the page at beginnerphotographypodcast.com. I'll see you inside. With that, let's get right on into this week's interview with Nicole Begley. You have always worked with animals. You were a zoological trainer for 13 years, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
Tell me when you knew that photography was going to play as important of a role in your life as animals have.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, my first 13 years out of college, I was a zoological animal trainer working with free flight birds and seals and primates and everything in between. Super fun. But I got to the point where I was, kind of middle management per se, that I was leading my team, loved my team, but it was, sometimes you have bosses that are a little bit more challenging to work for. And it had gotten to the point where I was no longer loving every piece of my job that I used to. And I was like, I think it's time for something new. I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. Always thought I'd work for myself. And I had no idea it was going to be photography. So the love of animals definitely came first. And I had an appreciation of photography and always had, art classes in high school and like ceramics and things like that. But I never, I don't know. I wasn't one of those people that had a camera in my hand since I was 5. I enjoyed taking pictures of the animals that I worked with throughout all my zoological years, and, just really loved and appreciated photography. And then when I was looking to do something on my own, I considered becoming a dog trainer, but then I realized I didn't have the patience to deal with the clients that I would assign homework for and then come back the next week and they didn't do the homework and were mad at me that their dogs don't have the same behavior. I'm like, I don't have the patience for that. All right, can I scratch that? What's next? And then I was like, I could be a photographer. But this was 2010 and I didn't think I could be a pet photographer. So I started off doing families and pets. And then about 5 years later, I went all pets and stopped doing the families.
Oh my gosh, that's still a big jump, right? Obviously, that
Yeah.
progression, it totally makes sense. But going from strictly learning and working with animals to then working with a camera, what would you say were maybe some of the biggest challenges early on that you had when it came to actually learning the technical side of photography?
Oh gosh, yeah. I just kind of dove into just absorbing everything that I could. And you look back at it, and when you're first learning how to shoot with manual, and you're like, gosh, I'm never gonna get this. This is so complicated. And then like one day, all of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. Why did I ever think this was hard? It just like clicks. So a lot of things like that, they seem overwhelming when you start, but it was just a desire to continue learning, and I still have that desire to continue learning. I mean, I still go to workshops now to learn new things, and super interested in compositing and things like that now. So I'm always looking for new ways to improve my craft and just learn and enjoy. So I think if you approach it from this um, place of just curiosity and the desire and willingness to learn, and the knowing that it's okay that you're going to fail, that sometimes you're going to take like just a really bad shot, and it's okay.
That's true. That's most of my shots. I get that. I totally get that. Now, you said early on that in 2010 you didn't think that you could just focus primarily on pet photography, so you did families. Is it families and pets, or families specifically with their pets?
No, it's families one side and pets one side. I of course did have some families that would bring their pet, but it was definitely two different target markets, two different genres. um Yeah, because I really just was like, there's no way. I think at the time, and there was maybe a handful of pet photographers. Now there's at least a handful in most markets. So we're growing, but there's still a fairly small genre of the whole big photography segment.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. It's one of those things that whenever I hear of a pet photographer, it's always so interesting because um, most people growing up, they love they love animals, or they love photography, but very seldomly do you think that you can actually marry those two things together, not in a commercial sense, I suppose, doing like advertisements and stuff for pet food and stuff. But you have found now, since 2010, that you have a good amount of clients that sustain you to be able to exclusively photograph animals. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's room for many of us in all the markets. Because gosh, I'm gonna forget the numbers and totally butcher it, but it was something. It's an obscene amount of billions that the pet industry spends on pets in the U.S. alone per year. Like a lot. So there are so many pets in so many different households, and they are all, ready to spend money on their pets.
And there's yours.
Yeah, yeah, there's my two-legged pet running through behind me. Oh, he needed to get something for the dog.
So when it comes to then, I suppose, photographing animals, right? There in the beginning, you had this training when it came to working with animals. How much do you think that that's necessary going forward in starting a photography business? As many people might want to photograph dogs, they might want to photograph other animals, but they probably don't have the same level of training that you had. Do you think that that's
Right.
necessary to be able to photograph animals in the capacity that you do?
No, they don't need to have like the amount of, training, like operant conditioning, able to train animals and get illicit behaviors from them. They don't need to have that level of training or a background working with animals, but they do need to have a fundamental level of understanding of the natural history of these animals and their behavior, and how their body language dictates the behavior of the animal. So you can look at a dog and just know if that dog is stressed, if that dog is excited, if that dog is nervous or anxious or wary of that other dog, and learning to have a general knowledge of basic behavior of what you reinforce is going to continue, and to what you ignore or don't reinforce might go away, so that you just can have some general tools to start to work with these dogs. For instance, if you show up at a shoot and the dog loves his parents, they or the dog knows his people, but the dog's maybe nervous around new people, or maybe the dog's nervous of the camera. I mean, that's a pretty big, scary thing that we're like, hey, we have this giant thing staring at you. It looks like a giant eyeball. So maybe they're nervous about that. So we need to have enough knowledge that we can say, hey, dog, it's okay. I'm your friend. Here's this camera. It's not going to be scary. So I start my sessions really as I pull up my camera. Well, first, let me back up. Before I even pull out the camera, you need to start engaging that dog and kind of seeing where that dog's at and the comfort level of that dog. So before we even have our session, I'm talking to the client, asking them about their dog. Is their dog comfortable around other dogs, around other people? Are they nervous in busy situations? Where are we going to be shooting? What's that situation like? Just to have a idea of what might await me there. And then I get there and I go over and I say hello to the owners, and I pretty much ignore the dog for a second just to be, talking to the owner, and I'm keeping an eye on how the dog's behaving. Because some dogs you can like walk up to them and be like, dog, oh my God, and like, be all excited, and the dog's like, yeah. And the dog's like, yes, like a golden retriever or a lab's gonna be like, oh my God, hi, I love you so much. But you do that to a more nervous dog, or a dog that maybe has a background they just adopted from a shelter that's been a little bit nervous, or you don't know what their background is. You might just totally blow their mind and be hard to get them back for the session. So I greet the owner, I keep an eye on the dog, I'll kind of get down on the level, might let the dog come over and sniff me, and then I can maybe start petting the dog. I'm not going to reach straight for their head, because if somebody you didn't know reached straight for your face, you might be a little bit nervous of that as well.
100%.
Yeah.
There's no mics. I would not appreciate that.
Especially in the age of COVID, you're like 6 feet back. No. But so we want to just take it slowly. And then I'll pull my camera out and I'll just see if the dog has a reaction to that. And I might just press the shutter button to see if the dog has a reaction to that. And if we're still all good, I might hold it up a little, and you just kind of see, like if I held the camera up and started to put it in my face, and all of a sudden I noticed the dog's ears started to go back and their like shoulders kind of hunched down a little bit. That's telling me, oh wait, I'm getting a little nervous here. So I have the camera out, I have some treats. It's like, hey, camera, treat, click, treat. They're like, oh, wait, this thing is really, really good and really delicious. And, then they quickly start to become more comfortable. So having that level of just being aware of what their body language is telling us, and some quick and easy ways to help an animal overcome something that's a little bit nervous, are two really important pieces to the pet photography puzzle. And one last thing is that you really need to enjoy photographing dogs to do this well. I don't want anyone out there that like really doesn't like dogs to think, oh, this is going to be a great genre. I should just jump in here because it's going to be easy money. No, if you don't love the animals, it's going to show, and their owners will love the animals, and it's just not going to fit as well. Like for instance, if I, really dislike newborn photography, I probably shouldn't be a newborn photographer. Like you need to photograph the things that you love. So definitely make sure you have the love and patience for dogs, because it does require quite a bit of patience, because you're setting up the same shot numerous times on occasion. And, I can literally have patience that goes on for days for dogs. Some humans, not so much, but dogs all day long.
That's hilarious. So when I'm interested more in, I guess, in that interaction, because I'm thinking of this in the sense of working with people. And for me, shooting weddings, whenever I show up to an engagement session, it's easy for me to communicate to somebody, right? I can simply tell them, and then they understand. And then that's what we do. As far as animals go, there has to be times in which you show up and maybe an animal is really nervous and just doesn't catch on. Is probably more difficult.
Yep.
How often would you say that happens?
Not too often. I would say the most challenging dogs to photograph tend to be the dogs that are really old and maybe no longer can see or hear very well. So those two senses are really what we use to get that expression and that engagement from the dog, especially noises. I often kind of set the dog up in the area that I want them to be, with the owner, with or without the owner, I guess. And I have them over there. I get my settings ready. I shoot with a long lens at times, so I'm far away, but then I'll just, get everything ready and then just elicit the expression with a like you start making like little dog whining noises. I have all sorts of hunting calls that I can, make all sorts of crazy noises with. My personal favorite is the distressed cottontail rabbit call.
What?
I don't even know what
So
hunter uses
specific.
this, or like what they're trying to call in with that. But yeah, the dogs are like, whoop, their ears go up, their head tilts a little bit, their mouth closes. They're like, what is that? I've never heard that before. So we have all these little tricks. You start to speak their language a little bit, in order to just get them to get that expression. And that's what I think owners are so nervous before the session, because we have two giant objections as pet photographers that we need to address before a client comes in front of our lens. Number one is they think that their dog is not well enough behaved and they don't have a sit and a stay, and there's no way we can create these images of their dog. Like all the time, 90% of the pet parents out there would see beautiful pet photography and they immediately say, God, that's beautiful. My dog would never do that. So that's a huge objection. We need to educate people and say, no, all dogs can do it. We have the ways to make this happen. The other giant objection people have before they choose to, move forward with pet photography is that my dog can't be off leash. They see all these incredible images in the city and these beautiful vistas, and the dog's off leash. But most of those dogs were not off leash. They were photographed on a leash, and we remove it in post. So those two pieces are just so important to let potential clients know, to help them come to the conclusion that they too can do this.
Wow, yeah, that's something that I never would have assumed. I guess, I look at a photo of a dog who doesn't have a leash on, and I would just naturally assume that dog just didn't have a leash when they were getting photographed. That's really interesting. So that must create a lot of extra time for you when it comes to post work. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, a little bit. It depends. It is definitely built in, and you learn really quickly what you need to avoid. So the first time that you take a picture and you have them holding the leash where it's kind of down on the dog's shoulder, and maybe it's like, as you're looking at the image, it's dog's shoulder, leash, and then the outer, like the background, that you don't have a clean edge of the dog's shoulder, I promise you'll never do it again. Or you'll also, like, if you have the leash on the ground and it's like between the dog's legs or down around toes and you have to rebuild toes, again, you'll never do that again. You'll get really, really crazy about making sure that leash goes straight up off the back of the dog, and you tell the owner and show them exactly how to hold it, or you have an assistant that holds it. You'll also be mindful of where that leash, if it's coming off the side, if it's a dog with big floppy ears, and it's like, as you're looking at the image, face, space, ear, and then that leash is coming from the neck, like underneath the ear, around the bottom of the ear, like you get really, really good at it. Should come off the dog, not touch any outer edge of the dog, and go straight on the background. And then it's actually not too bad. We get really, really good. We have quite a few different tricks. Like, say you're taking a picture of a dog, especially on something like a building or something that has more detail, and it's not just like pretty, soft background of trees. Then, the dog's standing there and the owner's holding it. Oftentimes I'll get the shots that I need, and then I'll have both the dog and the owner step out of the way, and I'll just take a background image. And then it's really easy just to merge those in post and just paint away the leash and everything else, or paint the dog back in. So there's a lot of little tricks like that save us a lot of time.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's awesome that you kind of have a system worked out for something like that, because my first reaction would be just take the dog off the leash, and then I'm sure that things would just go nuts. So I'm glad that there's professionals in the world like you who are doing this, and not me. When it comes to photographing those animals, though, being a pet photographer, I'm always interested in learning the why, right? So because I shoot weddings and somebody else shoot weddings, we can have two completely different reasons as to why we photograph weddings and what it is that we try to capture at each wedding, right? So as a pet photographer, in your own words, what would you say is the job description of a dog photographer? What are you trying to capture?
We capture the relationship of, a human and a canine or equine, or, our animal partner, really. the clients that come before my lens, they see these animals as a member of their family. A lot of my dog clients don't have children of the two-legged variety, or if they do, they're empty nesters, so their kids are off to college, or they're young professionals often. So their dog is their world, and they know that, they're with us for such a short time. Dog years, unfortunately, are not that long in the grand scheme of things. So they just want to, capture that relationship and capture the character of their four-legged companion in a way that, because I say one of the things that people say most whenever they see their images that I've taken is that I've captured the dog as they know them. Like I capture the different expressions that they are so used to seeing that they often, for whatever reason, don't get from just pulling out their phone. They are able to start to, well, I'm able to capture for them this just range of different expressions that their dogs often create because of all these different tricks we have up our sleeves of getting those different expressions with the different, cottontail rabbit distress calls and dog whining noises and action shots and all these different different things.
So obviously, people take a lot of pictures of our animals, right? They're cute, they're furry. Sometimes they make funny faces. It's easy for us to want to take photos of our animals. So I'm sure that you see them when you scroll on Facebook, Instagram, and there's always something, right, that you can tell right away, like, oh, this photo was taken on a cell phone, or this photo's not that good. Just so that people listening know what to avoid, what would you say is just a clear sign of an amateur pet photo?
Oh, I mean, I think it comes down to what everything in photography comes down to, and that's light. Especially with a black dog or a black and white dog, just making sure that you're in the proper light to get a good exposure. Um, I would say just as important as the light is also just that expression where the dog is actually looking into the lens and not like, if the lens is over here, the dog's not looking like 3 feet above it over here. Or, you're actually getting this connection with your subject, which again, yeah, light and connection with your subject, I think is the key of any portrait, no matter what the subject.
I love that. That makes it nice and easy for somebody to,
Yeah.
try to get better photos themselves. Just look for better light and then wait for the right moment. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or
Cool.
create the right moment. Look for good light
Ooh,
and then
wait a
get your
second.
animal. Like I always set everybody up, and then I create the moment with, I make sure I'm ready to go. I have my test shot, my settings are dialed in. I know how I'm going to compose the shot. And then you just let loose one of those crazy noises or throw something up in the air or have somebody run behind you and the dog's like, whoop, and you got it.
I love those expressions. Dog expressions are so much fun. Cats,
Uh-huh.
not so much. But dogs are a lot of fun.
They're a
Dogs are
little
lot
bit
of
more
fun.
challenging, those cats. I
Yeah.
always like to tell people I don't do a ton of cat photography. There's just not, if you love cat photography, you could definitely create something, create a business around that. But I have just found in my experience, there aren't nearly as many cat owners that want to invest in like a cat photography session as there are as dog owners. But when I do them on rare occasion, I always let the owner know that this is going to be kind of like um, essentially a newborn session. I'm like, this could take half an hour or it could take 3 hours. We are 100% on the cat's time.
I believe it. Having
Yeah.
known a few cats in my life, they're not very cooperative.
No, they are if they're in, depends. They just rule the roost. They know that they have all the power and control.
That's an easy way of putting it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a nice
yeah.
way of putting it. When it comes to photographing these pets, are you often taking photos of? Is it mostly just the pet? Is the session mostly just the pet, or is it the pet and the parents? How does a typical session work for you? What are you
Yeah.
trying to capture?
Usually pets and parents, depends. I have a consultation with everybody before, usually via the phone, and just to find out what they're looking for. Because sometimes I have people that hire me that really just want a big, beautiful portrait of their dog on the wall. Great, we'll focus on that. Or somebody that maybe they're coming and they want to do an album, so we want to create more of that story. So having an idea of generally what they want to create from their session definitely helps us plan and know what we're going to photograph more of. For the most part, though, Most sessions include their pet parents, any of the humans that live in their house, and the dog, and we'll focus some of it. I usually do the ones with the pet parents when they first get there, because mom's hair is done, makeup's done, like they don't have to worry about after running around with the dog and getting hot and sweaty because it's summertime. Like, we get all those pictures out of the way first, and then we'll focus on the dog afterwards. But yeah, just about every session we have some part of it that focuses on the relationship between the two, and then also just the dog. And for those owners, because there are the owners that are like, oh, I don't want to be in the photos, I usually encourage them to. I'm like, you don't have to do anything with these. Let's at least create a few of them. And I also say, I would love to create a few where you're in the image, but you're not the main focus of the image. So it doesn't all have to be a traditional, everybody sitting and smiling at the camera. It can be the dog sitting next to the owner and you just have the owner's feet and the dog looking up at the camera. It could be, if it's a small dog, the dog on the owner's shoulder and you're shooting the back of the owner's head with the dog looking towards you, kind of like you would with a toddler. So there's different shots that you can do that include the parents without it being like a traditional shot of them and the dog looking at the camera, which is what I think a lot of owners think when you say, hey, do you want to be in photographs with the dog? They're gonna be like, well, yeah. I don't want to put a picture of me and my dog smiling at the camera on the wall. Because they don't always understand that it can be a little bit more, they can be a little bit more discreet about themselves in the picture than a big grinning photograph.
Yeah, but man, that's what I would want. I would want the photo of all of our faces all like snuck together, just all close, and big group hug with the pup in there. That's what I want. That's exactly what would go on the wall.
Yeah,
for sure.
I love it.
I want to go back to kind of the beginning right now, and focus a little bit more on that transition that you made, going from working strictly with animals to jumping into photography and then working with animals, right?
Yep.
So as you said, 2010, pet photography wasn't exactly a proven thing yet, I guess.
Right.
There wasn't really many. So what was it about the idea of photographing pets that made you just jump in head first rather than picking something maybe easier, quote unquote?
You're listening to the free version of the Beginner Photography Podcast, where each week you learn how world-class photographers see and capture the world around them. If you want to hear the extended interview with their best business tips to learn how to make money with your camera, then become a premium member today by heading over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and click the premium membership button to join now.
Oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. And I don't think that that's something that I think many photographers are going to think about.
Right.
But again, as I said earlier, if somebody takes just that piece of information right there, cuts that part out of this podcast, and just uses that piece of information, I don't see how they couldn't grow their business with that. So thank you so much for sharing that little piece of information right there.
Yeah, of course.
I'll write down that timestamp. That was great. Let's get back to photography for a few minutes here. The last few minutes that I still got you. When it comes to people, when it comes to an engagement session, you know what I do with every couple? I have to pose them because I want them to look good in their photos. I want them to look a certain way. When it comes to pets, I've had dogs, I've had cats. I can't get them to do anything that I want them to, let alone I can't imagine the struggles that you go through in terms of posing or not. Is posing something that you even have to worry about? Is this something that you do? How does this work as a pet photographer?
Yes. So it won't be long if you're a pet photographer that you will then post in one of the pet photography Facebook groups, hey guys, how much do you edit out male dogs' lipstick because of how they are sitting. Yeah. So posing does matter. But that still happens sometimes. And, you can't necessarily tell the dog, okay, you're sitting straight on. Now just shift your hips to the left a little bit and use that front paw to cover up your little doggy man parts there. So yes and no. You have to sometimes, I photograph for expression. So if that dog has this amazing, engaging expression, we're going to make the posing work, even if it involves editing out anatomical parts. But you do try to set it up in a way that, you do have a little bit of posing, but it's still really, really organic. So when for instance, if I'm doing just the dog, I know this is the background that I want. I know, what focal length I want to shoot at. I know how much of the scene I'm going to want in the viewfinder. I know how big the dog's going to be in that area. Like, it's all there. And I have the owner keep the dog right about there. And I usually don't care if the dog's sitting or standing. And so I tell the owner, like, the dog should just be here. And if they're starting sitting, I say, if he stands up, it's fine. Because if you don't let the owner know that, then all of a sudden the dog stands up and you're still getting great expression, but the owner's like, sit, 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 freaking out and stressed. And the dog's like, dude, what's going on? Why are you yelling at me? She's making all these cool noises over here, and and she has treats. So there is posing, but it's very flexible, and I tend to look for the expression more so than the pose.
Mm-hmm. So typically, can you walk me through maybe what you're looking for? Is it just sit, stand, like in between those? Is there more that you can get from that?
Yeah. Sometimes it's nice to have dogs like up on something, like a bigger dog. Maybe it's just a bench. Like a smaller dog, you can put up a little bit higher. Of course, it's always important to make sure the owner's right there and the dog's safe. If it's a small dog and a high thing, you don't want them jumping off and getting hurt. Always keep your leash on or somebody right there. So keep that safety in mind. But when you're able to put a dog up on something, then you can shoot from below a little bit. And then that dog seems like larger than life. So maybe the dog's standing and their head's kind of coming down towards the camera, and you have this like great big cartoon almost head of this dog. And it's just an angle of view that most owners never see, but they feel like, they're like, oh my God, that is my dog. Like if my dog was a superhero, that would definitely be my dog. So, there's different ways to do like that. They can be laying down. Sometimes they'll lay on a ledge, or if they'll lay down on the grass. If it's a dog that really loves his belly scratch, it's great to have them, get their belly scratch and they're rolling over and you can shoot straight down on them. One word of caution, though, if you're going to shoot down on a dog. So if you're standing over the dog, shooting down with a wide angle lens, you really, really, really need to watch that body language and that comfort level of that dog, because anytime someone comes over them like that, that's pretty scary and a vulnerable spot for the dog, especially with this big, giant, like wide angle lens, looks like a giant eye. They can get pretty nervous about that. So not all dogs can handle that, even at the end of a session, like a wide angle lens shot right over their head looking down. It's a super cute shot, but some dogs get really, really nervous. Some require a lot of treats, and just, you get it quick and you're done, and you reinforce them and you're like, okay, it was good. And then a lot of them, like, that's not a shot you'd want to start your session off with, because the dog would be like, holy cow, where are we? What's going on? This is terrifying. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
It does. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to posing animals, I guess I'm just so clueless, but all those things that you mentioned totally make sense,
Yeah.
And in the same way, it's kind of like people. I have couples sit down, I have couples stand, I have couples lay down on the grass or something like that.
Yep.
But as you said, it's a lot about the expression and whatever you need to do to get that and focus on who they are and get that personality.
Yep.
That's what you got to do. So
yeah, just like, wedding photographers, the bride and groom, they could be perfectly posed, but if they're like rigid and don't have any good expression on their face, it's not going to be a sellable image that you're going to want to have.
Oh yeah, there's nothing worse than the just like no smile in the eyes,
yeah,
just like the
right,
wide
like...
teeth. Oh, it's the worst.
Like,
it's the worst.
My fourth grader smile. He had that when he was like first grade. It'd be smile. It'd be like,
yeah. This is just teeth, right? That's how these smiles work. What do you think is, when it comes to pet photography, what do you think is a misconception that many people just get wrong when they think about what it's like to be a dog photographer?
Oh gosh. I think they think that we just play with dogs all day. But, as with any other photography business too, such a small piece of our photography business is actually the photography. That it's just as much editing and administrative work and marketing and things like that. It's not all just puppy breath and dog treats. And you better be prepared to get your camera gear cleaned more often, because pretty much every time I have someone clean my gear, they're like, yeah, this is disgusting.
What is this?
Keep dog hair on your sensor. Yeah. Peanut butter on the outside of my camera,
Oh man. Do you just carry like a jar of Jif to each session? Is that how that works?
Sometimes I don't use it a ton, but I do. They have those little like individual packs, that are like an ounce. If you guys do use peanut butter though, make sure that it's not like the sugar-free peanut butter with the xylitol, because the xylitol is so very super toxic to dogs. Like, and it's in a lot of gum. But there are a couple brands of peanut butter that have it too, so be very careful with that.
That's a pro tip that I never would have thought of. I never would have even given that a second tip. And I'm glad, because now somebody is not going to take sugar-free peanut butter to a session and kill their client's dog.
That would be very bad. And really, truly, before you ever give any client dog any food, I always ask the owners, because some of these dogs have allergies or special diets. So I always ask them if they have any diet restrictions. I ask them before the session how picky they are. If the dog has diet restrictions or is really picky, I have the owners bring the treats, and I just tell them to cut them up really, really small. Like, the smaller the treats, the better. Gosh, especially for little dogs, but even big dogs. You're going to be working with these dogs for an hour to an hour and a half. You're not giving them treats the whole time, but if you're giving them like this giant treat all the time, they're going to be full and satiated and not have any sort of interest in the food. So, like, truly, it's like a little nugget. It's like hardly anything, a crumb. And they're like, okay, I'll keep working.
That's like kids. You wouldn't want to feed a kid candy for an hour and a half.
Exactly. They don't get the giant cookie. You're going to break that cookie up to get as much motivation as you can out of that cookie.
The motivational cookie.
Yes.
I got one last
motivational cookies.
Oh man, you got that right. I got one last thing that I want to talk about here before I let you go, and that really is what you touched upon before, is just being safe with animals. Animals, as you know, as I assume, can be very dangerous, can be not wild. What's the word I'm looking for? You don't know what they're going to do, right? At a moment's notice.
Right. Unpredictable.
Unpredictable. You got it. That was the one. What sort of special precautions do you need to take aside from body language? And then lastly, what about like insurance? Do you have to have some sort of special insurance to photograph dogs as well?
Yeah, for the insurance, definitely talk to your insurance person. We should all have liability insurance, no matter what you're photographing or where you are, and photographing at different locations usually require that. So definitely talk to your insurance agent about that protection. But then as far as safety, just really being in tune with that body language and what the dogs are telling you is so key. And also not being afraid to just take control of the session, because a lot of times I've seen where we're out somewhere, and if the dog can be off leash and it's safe to do so, like we're not in the city, we're at a park and there's no other dogs, no other people, there's not a busy road nearby, okay, maybe we'll do part of the session off leash. But if I notice the dog is not listening to the owner and is like sniffing and like, into all the other stuff around more so than us, then I'm going to be the one to say, all right, let's put the dog back on leash. Like, you don't have to wait for the owner to say, because the owner's going to push it, because the owner feels like they want their dog off leash because those pictures turn out better. Where quite honestly, having the dog on leash often turns out better because you get to keep the dog in one spot. Just, not being afraid to take control about that. And the same thing, if you're photographing kids and dogs, that's a situation that you just need to be really careful with, because any family photographer knows you show up to the session, mom's stressed, dad's stressed, you're stressed, kids are stressed, dog's stressed now because they're like, why the hell is everybody else so stressed? Oh my God, we're going to die. So you have all of this stress there, and animals are very sensitive to that. And, and you don't want the, kids to get in the dog's face, and maybe the dog's totally fine at home, but this is a situation. You're at a different location. Everyone else is stressed. Like, it's a whole different location. So you just want to be really, really careful and look at every situation as, how can this go badly? Okay, let's stop it. So you just really want to be extra careful, more so than you would be just if, the dog was at home.
Yeah. And I think, again, it kind of comes down to, with people, it's pretty easy to communicate. You can just use your words. and with animals, just getting to really know who they are and how it is that they behave. So, Nicole, is there anything that maybe I didn't ask you today that you just want to make sure that listeners know about photographing dogs?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, if you really want to, like, if you really feel drawn to this, just learn, practice. There's so many great resources to learn more about dogs. For instance, a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I can't be a dog photographer. I don't have a dog. I didn't get my dog till 4 years ago. So I had the first 6 years of my business without a dog of my own, which is unheard of in the pet photography world, but it can be done. So just to go and learn, learn about body language, learn about dog behavior. There's a great book if you want to learn a little bit about training. It's called Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. Super easy read. Bonus points. It's going to help you with your spouse and your kids and anyone else you deal with. So everyone should go read that one. But yeah, there's just continue learning, and don't be afraid to ask for feedback, or ask the owner, if the dog's okay. Don't be afraid to let the dog take a break. I know when I first started photography, I felt like if I wasn't shooting every second of the session, then the client was going to realize that I didn't really know what I was doing. So I better look like I'm busy all the time. But that was just my ego trying to protect me, because I was like, well, I don't really know if I know what I'm doing. So don't be afraid during a session to take it slow. And if the dog seems a little stressed, just let him take a break, take a walk, just chill out for a minute. And, it's totally fine.
I love that. Oh, Nicole, again, thank you so much for coming on, sharing everything that you did. I got one last question for you, and that is, if those listening want to know more about dog photography, first of all, maybe do you have like a podcast reference that people could listen to? And second of all, where else could listeners find you online?
Sure, absolutely. So I run the Hair of the Dog podcast. It is a podcast for pet photographers. So we talk all about the craft and business of pet photography over there. So definitely check us out. And you can find that at hairofthedogacademy.com, which is also a website that has a ton of content. We have a whole bunch of free content as well to help you improve your craft and grow your business.
I hope that you can see from this interview that I really hope that you can see from this interview with Nicole that really whatever you love in life, like, just go after it. Nicole here was able to marry two of her passions, right? Pets, animals, and photography together. And you can just hear it in her voice, just how fulfilled she is creatively to be able to do great work. So don't stop, just keep looking for that thing, try new things, and then just go after it. So that is it for this week. Until next week, stay safe, make do, make more, do more, and make do with what you got, because I promise you, it is better than you think. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.